first time a businessman from Twickenham in Middlesex started his attempt on the world's land speed record, it ended with a very violent accident at 200 miles an hour and a pile of scrap worth £175. That £175 has now grown into a much more elaborate and serious attempt to recapture the world's land speed record and to travel on land at 680 miles an hour and bring the record back to Britain. Now, the man who's going to strap himself to this Rolls-Royce Avon engine, which was extricated from a Lightning fighter, and will accelerate from rest to 600 miles an hour in 23 seconds, is businessman Richard Noble. Richard, an American Stan Barrett has already travelled at 739 miles an hour on land, and you're only aiming at 680. Why will that be enough?
Well, what Stan Barrett achieved was really a phenomenal achievement. There's absolutely no doubt about it. He broke the sound barrier. But the rules for the world land speed record state that the car has to make 2 passes over a measured mile within a period of 1 hour.
Now, the car at the moment is in its test and demonstration form, Richard. Now, how different will it look when you go for the record?
Well, we've got a long way to go yet. Basically, at this stage, we're using the car as a demonstration car this season, and we're running it with only a limited amount of bodywork on. But as you can see, it's basically a ginormous one-off. Everything on this car has been specially built, with the exception, of course, of the engine, which has come straight out of a Lightning. And if you look, as a good example of this, if you look at the front suspension here, the whole front suspension and the wheel and tyre, etc., is worth about the same as a Ford Granada. And it even has a special rubber suspension, and the rubber has been made specially for us, designed specially for us. These wheels, of course, have been made specially by Wolf Race to fit the tyres. The tyres come from a Lightning fighter. Dunlop's has spent a lot of time on developing these tyres for us, and we now know that we can run up to 260 miles an hour in this country on runways using these wheels.
And the whole of the body will eventually be enclosed with panels?
Oh yes, yes.
And on the near side there, Richard, I see there's a passenger seat.
Yes, this car was originally conceived as a display car, which we'd use use for demonstrations to raise money for our third car. We will actually be going on to a third car after this. And we therefore thought it might be rather fun to include a passenger seat. The passenger seat is going to be used this season, where we'll give 1 or 2 people exciting runs in this thing up to 250 miles an hour.
You certainly will. And what's that behind there?
Then behind here, we've got 2 fuel tanks on the car. This one here carries 65 gallons, and that feeds the afterburner, the reheat.
And that's through that pump?
Right.
There.
This pump here is a turbine-driven pump driven off compressed air from the engine. It pumps the fuel through into the afterburner there at a rate of 1,500 gallons per hour.
Was that an expensive piece of equipment?
Well, if you look at all this little collection here, you're talking about £15,000 worth.
Now, how much space will you need for the record run?
Well, we need about 8 miles for the run, and then I think I would like to see another 5 miles at either end for overruns.
Sergeant John Watkins, you're the man in charge of the engine. Tell me, how do you start a thing like this? I don't see a handle on the front.
We use a smaller jet engine which drives the starter motor on the front of the main engine, which turns the compressor, and then we light the engine when the compressor's turning.
I see. Now, when it's running at idle, what's its fuel consumption?
About 5 gallons a minute.
And at full throttle?
50 to 60 gallons a minute.
So, Richard, how much will this attempt cost you?
Well, you're looking at about £400,000 worth of car here, and I reckon the actual record attempt will probably cost something around the same.
That's not your money?
No, there are 107 British companies working on this, and I just purely financed the first car.
Now, Richard, how afraid are you?
Well, this has been a lifetime's ambition, and really I'm not all that afraid. I just want to get driving, quite frankly.
Well, what motivated you to want to do it in the first place?
Well, I've always had a love of speed, of aircraft engineering and cars, and this is really rather a fine mixture of the two.
And when do you think you'll actually be trying for the record?
Well, we'll be ready to go very early in '81.
Well, I'm sure every motorist in the country is right behind you, Richard. And on behalf of all them, may we wish you every success and bring the record back to Britain.
Thank you very much.